All right, so the news breaking late Thursday night that Texas and Oklahoma will officially come into the SEC in 2024. Uh, I think it's good news just because I think it's a lot of fun to finally have, how do you put this? Teams that I think people will get excited about playing. I don't think that's ever been the case with Missouri. I think most people watching this know how I feel about Missouri. But this is coming from Sports Illustrated's Ross Dellinger, who's done a really good job reporting on this. Um, there's going to be a lot to talk about on this subject, but right now I'm going to talk about the reality that is coming, that this is going to be the last season where the SEC has its traditional roles and schedules that we've seen for the last, 30 years. So since 1992, we've seen the SEC been split in divisions. Georgia plays Florida and Auburn every year. They also play Tennessee. Well, I shouldn't say Florida and Auburn because I think that's going to continue. But stuff like Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Georgia, Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, Georgia, Mississippi State, those games are going to happen far more often than they do now. Back to my Missouri criticism. Missouri came into the league 10 years ago. So this was the 11th season where Georgia has played Missouri. There is nothing about Missouri that matters in any way to the Georgia Bulldogs. It is an irrelevant game. They have never, I mean, are you talking about baseball, basketball, football? Missouri doesn't matter. They are a stale cracker with no salt. They are irrelevant. And when you added South Carolina, you added a team that was right there, 3 hours away from Athens, if that. A state that you have a lot of Georgia people in Charleston. You have a lot of Georgia people in the upstate. You have a lot of Georgia people clearly in Augusta. You have a lot of South Carolina people in Augusta and Aiken. Lexington's not that far. It's a huge game that for Carolina for sure, but it's a huge game that's been played pretty much continuously since the 60s, with a couple of exceptions in the 80s. So now you when you brought Carolina in, it made sense that you'd play Alabama less often. It made sense that you'd play LSU less often. But when you brought in Missouri and you brought in Texas A&M, no one cares about that game. And frankly, no one cares about Texas A&M Georgia playing, but they do. Or they have once. They played exactly once in 12 years. Texas A&M and Georgia. It's crazy. And because of that, the league and Georgia and its games, they have sacrificed the ability to play Alabama, LSU, etc., Arkansas, I guess you could say. You've sacrificed the traditional games. Georgia and Ole Miss played for decades. And that game just doesn't get played anymore. So that you could play Missouri every single year, so that you could fit them into a television contract. And you didn't even get the bulk of the thing out of CBS, but that's okay because we've arrived at 2024. And why does that matter? It matters a lot. It matters a lot. I'm going to tell you why. Make sure those of you who are watching this for the first time, Double Dogs is available for you down below. It's at the printers now. If you sign up today, again, the link is down below. It will get mailed out to you in early March. If you've already bought the book, you know what's going on. You've heard me talk about it plenty. But for all the new folks watching, make sure you're picking up Double Dogs. It's our look at the 2022 National Championship of the Georgia Bulldogs, 80 pages, full color, hardcover coffee table book. Now you're going to play Alabama essentially every other year. We don't know everything yet. Um, I don't know the folks at the SEC. I've dealt with them plenty enough to know they know where they're going with this. They do need to get presidential approval. So, this isn't something that, Scott Woodward or Josh Brooks is going to be, or Mitch Barnhart is going to be uh, signing off. This is an institutional development that you brought in Texas and Oklahoma early. It also coincides with the new world of college football. So there's multiple things happening at once. We've had a massive reset here, a recalibration of college football, what it means, not just in college football, but in television, in media. You're going to see the SEC more on ESPN. You're going to see less of the Big Ten on ESPN. Well, you're not going to see the Big Ten on ESPN at all. And I think with stuff like Sports Center and the viral highlights, you're not going to see that. It's the focus is going to go towards the SEC, understandably speaking, because the rights holder there. You don't see NASCAR hardly on ESPN at all. Why? Well, they don't. They're not in that game. They're not in that business, so they don't. They rarely show it. They show it in the playoffs. They probably show the Daytona 500. That's it. Um, Obviously, the SEC and ESPN and Disney are in bed together. That's a good thing for the consumer, generally speaking. You get the SEC network. You get all of the Southeastern Conference properties on live television for every single home basketball game, a conference game for sure. The bulk of them, if you're not getting home basketball games on linear television with the SEC network or the ESPN or any of the ESPN properties, you're getting it on streaming. But now that Texas and Oklahoma are going to join, what you're seeing in 2023 is the close of what we've seen for the SEC for a long time. This will be the last Georgia Florida on CBS. This will be the last SEC championship on CBS. This will be the last time, probably, you're going to see Auburn, Alabama during the daytime. This may be the last time you see Tech, Georgia on a Saturday. That last one is, I don't know if that would really happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Um, you're going to see a much more professional product from the SEC. You're going to see SEC basketball games on ABC if you have an antenna like I do. You're going to get that game for free. If you uh, if you like night games, congratulations because they're coming in 2024. And I'm going to be very curious to see the 24 schedule for Georgia because they're slated to play Texas A&M as well as Clemson. The Clemson game is happening. There's just no confusion about that. But in terms of the Texas A&M Georgia game, my suspicion is that game will likely be played. I don't know that it will certainly be played because the addition of the Horns and Sooners, those guys got to play somebody, and Texas A&M is probably going to get both those guys on their schedule. That may mean that you move Georgia off. So I think it's an exciting time to figure out what the future holds. I'm going to talk about the 9-game schedule in the future. That is probably going to happen, and I can lay that out then. But um, we were going to see change in the SEC and in college football starting in 2024. It was clear to the Big 12 that its members did not want Texas and Oklahoma around, and it was clear also that OU and Texas didn't want to be there anymore. So the best thing that could have happened has happened, and that is that these teams are where they should be for the future. You also have the change to the college football playoff. So if you like college football the way it has been, this is a great year for you to celebrate, and if you're one of those people that likes to complain about everything, great. You can complain about how this is the last year, and then in 24 you can complain about it has not the way it was in 23, but you probably complained about it in 2011 about how Alabama and LSU shouldn't have been playing for a championship, and you complain about the playoffs. So I can't help you. You're a miserable person, and I'm not talking about anybody. Don't think I'm talking about you particularly. I do think that for Georgia, um, this gives a little bit larger margin for error. The Dogs for decades have scheduled aggressively. I mean, you can go back to the 70s and talk about, they played South Carolina and Clemson every single year. They played Georgia Tech every single year. They played 5 conference games, and then they played those 3 schools every single year. Um, that is definitely aggressive scheduling because they were going away to those schools as well. When the SEC went to divisions, Georgia kept playing Clemson. Eventually, that went away in terms of a yearly thing. But instead, and I can go back through time, in '02 and 3, they played Clemson to open. In '05, they opened with Boise. In '06, they played Colorado. In '07, they played Oklahoma State. In '08, they played uh, Arizona State, and then Colorado in 10. 9, they played Arizona State. They played Boise in 11. 12, I don't think they played a challenging opener in 12. 13 and 14 were Clemson. 15, they played, oh man, I can't remember. They did not have a challenging game. They opened at Vanderbilt. And then certainly the Kirby era, you had North Carolina in 16, Notre Dame in 17, 18 was nothing, and then 19 Notre Dame, 20 was supposed to be Virginia, 21 with Clemson, 22 was my gosh, I can't remember who they played in 22. Oh, Oregon to open the season. God, well, that's why I need double dogs. Pick it up. The link is down below. Um, this coming year, they had Oklahoma. That's gone because of the SEC's decision, which I get. 24 is Clemson, and then beyond that, I can tell you what they are, but they may or may not get played. 25 and 6 is UCLA. 27 is Florida State and Louisville. 28 is Texas, who will now be in the league. And then they play Florida State in 28 scheduled. And then in 29, now that Texas is in the league, it's irrelevant, but they got 29 and 30. They have Clemson. In 30, they actually have Clemson and Ohio State. We'll see if those games actually get played. The Clemson one is probably more likely. Ohio State, we'll see. But I think that this breaking news happened late Thursday night. It's great to sort of recalibrate where we're really at in all of this. And right now, I think it's fun, I have to say. A lot of us have been looking at this before the Big 12 existed, as to doesn't it make sense for Texas to be in the SEC? Well, they are now.